All right, we're back again. Welcome, community guest partner. This is episode number 361. I'm trying to work all these gadgets here. I had to throw in some introductory music. Anyways, I want to welcome Herbie Mack all the way from Florida. Herbie Mack all the way from Florida, Herbie Mack, HerbieMack.com. And then we have also Coach Jim with us from Tucson, Arizona. I'll be here all the way from Stockton, California. This is Your Solution Live. It's kind of a special edition. We're going to be here for about 40 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. I want to welcome you by way of Facebook, by YouTube, and I think we're twitching. We're twitching tonight. No, we're twitching on that app. Anyhow, we're there. So we want to welcome those of you that are watching. I see the numbers are jumping up. We have kind of a special edition tonight here, and hopefully, if you begin to enjoy what we have here tonight, the inspiration, the motivation, be sure to leave a comment, share, give us a like, please. That will help this mission go forward, and it'll help us help other people. So once again, we have Herbie Mack of HerbieMack.com with us tonight. He's going to be sharing. Let me make sure I got the music down and I have the comments up. Once again, I want to welcome those of you, YouTuber, Mr. Keevan, Laura, and those others. I see a bunch of you. Come on now. Get on the screen. Tell me who you are. You can be incognito. This is kind of like almost like Gamblers Anonymous, but not really. And we're going to give Jim an opportunity here to share a thought or two. And then we'll have Herbie Mack. Herbie Mack's going to be sharing his kind of who he is, where he hails from, what's kind of gotten him here, and what his mission is. What his mission is. He's got a broad mission. He's a suicide special. I call him SPS. Let me see if I got this right. Suicide prevention specialist, counselor, educator, post-suicide guidance and speaker, guest note speaker. So he's got a little bit of experience there, folks. Come on now. Ask your question. Challenge Herbie. Remember that movie, Herbie the Love Bug? It was, anyways, I think it was a Volkswagen Beetle. That's besides the point. All right, Cephas isn't with us. And again, we have Coach Jim out of Tucson, Arizona. I'm in Stockton. We are addiction busters. We consider ourselves addiction busters, individuals that you can reach out to, and we will direct you into the right path. That's our goal. That's our mission, to direct you into the right path. That's not an easy thing to do. So, Jim, give us a few minutes here. And I got a proverb, too. I want to read this before we get Herbie on. Jim, what's your thought? What can we learn tonight? You know, what can we learn? What would you like to learn? And what's holding you back? What's holding you back? Other than what's still holding you? What's holding you still, other than yourself? Anyways, go ahead and share a minute or two, and then we're going to give Herbie Mack the time here for him to share with us.
Yeah. How you doing there, Herbie? It's good to see you again. I remember we tried the podcast, a few months ago. Things didn't work out with the Wi-Fi, but here we are again. I'm looking forward to continuing our discussion on how you help, young people deal with addiction and suicide. I guess some of the things that I would like to go and learn is how you connect. What are your strategies? What are the methods you use to connect with the people to overcome their hopelessness, their despair, how to tackle negative emotions, in fighting through these dark times in their life. That's what I'm curious about. So so I'm looking forward to listening to your story and how you help people.
Now, before we Thank you, Jim. Before we get into Herbie here, before we allow Herbie to, I truly hope that those of you that are paying attention, I hope that you really walk away with something tonight from this live episode number 361. We all can learn something. We all can step up somewhere. We all can. I know I can. I'm challenged with my own situations on a daily. I do want to read a scripture before we get into Herbie sharing how he got here. And again, Herbie by no means has lived an easy life or has had any kind of easy trauma. So we look forward to him sharing. So we're going to read out the proverb here, Mark chapter, Mark chapter 10, chapter 11, verse 18. And it says, and the scribes, this is the New Testament, the authorized King James or the King James Version Bible. And the scribes and the chief priests heard it and sought how they might destroy him, for they feared him, because all the people was astonished at his doctrine. And when even was come, he went out of the city, and in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. And I'll go to verse 22. And Jesus answering saith unto them, have faith in God. Have faith in God. I know in my life that's been number one. So thank you for hearing that, for sharing, allowing me to share that with you. And we're going to give Herbie Mack of HerbieMack.com. You can reach him there, Herbie Mack. In fact, I'll try to type it out there and I can put it. But tell us, Herbie, I know Jim was asking you before we started. We got a little bit ahead in the last an episode that we couldn't air. We just had some technical issues. We were talking about your life. We were talking about some of the things that you had gone through. And I'm just going to let you share wherever you feel. And we'll take on questions. Those of you that are interested in asking questions again, feel free. Please post them there, and we're going to get to them. I'm going to keep an eye on them. Go ahead, Herbie.
Oh, thank you once again for having me on. I appreciate it. So essentially, my story started probably when I was about five or six. I was a kid, and I was always told that I wasn't allowed to express myself. I had to keep all my emotions inside and man up. And that was just something that was drilled to me since I was a child. And when I got older and certain things happened, right? Unfortunately, I had a cousin who had died. He was unfortunately murdered. And that was something that I kept all my feelings, all my emotions aside until the night. Until the night we had to go pay our respect. And then I lost it. And at that time, I was about 12 years old, 11 going on 12. And I was a wreck. You know, my father's there trying to hold me. And I felt like I let everyone down because I was showing my emotions. This was my older cousin that I looked up to, who was like a big brother to me. He was great at basketball. He's one of the reasons why I got into basketball. Actually, probably the reason. That's how good he was.
How young were you when this happened? How young?
I was about 11 going on 12. And unfortunately, he was murdered when he was about 16. And that really affected me. You know, I unfortunately, my mom and I was the last two to see him alive out the family. And that was just weird because, you know, he died on a Sunday and I saw him that Friday night. He was like, hey, I'm going to come over Sunday. I'm going to teach you how to shoot this jump shot as I promised. And he wasn't there. And I lost it at his funeral. And it was so bad to a point where I couldn't go to school. Huh?
My condolences, Herbie.
Oh, I appreciate it. It was so bad to a point where I couldn't go to school for about probably a month or so. My teachers and my principal gave me a packet to fill out, and I was still emotionally shocked and also disappointed because all the males that I looked up to or that was in my life during the time told me I can't express myself, and that just stuck with me. I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna cry anymore. I'm just gonna, as they say, man up. And as we fast
Now,
forward,
let me ask you this, Herbie.
yeah,
When these individuals that you were looking up to, they didn't did they necessarily tell you to man up, or was there other ways that you felt
nah, they just
intimidated?
told me to.
They just said it right out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, hey, you got to man up. I have a lot of female cousins, and so during the time I was always like around them, and
Yeah.
they was just scared that I was gonna turn out like my female cousins, right? Like, oh hey, we don't want him to be soft, we don't want him to be feminine,
Yeah.
we want him to be masculine. So they kept drilling that into me. Like, hey,
Okay.
man up, like man up. Get into sports, right? Don't get into video games, get into sports, play basketball or get into boxing or even watch wrestling and stuff like that. And I was living my life essentially for everyone else, like, okay, I can't really be me. And I can't show emotions unless it's something that dramatic of somebody passing or if a baby's born or something like that. That's the only time that's acceptable. And that was very confusing for me as a child and even into my teenage years.
So it definitely sounded like this your cousin was very, you guys were very close. Now, so your life went on from there. You dabbled into, I know you got into drinking and stuff, and
So from there, after that, unfortunately, I had a sister not even that long ago, probably 5 years. 5 years passed by. My sister had died from brain cancer. My younger sister, she had died from brain cancer. And when I received a phone call from my father, he didn't cry. I didn't cry. It was just like understood. And this time I felt like I made him proud because I didn't cry. Right. Like he told me the news. I'm over the phone. I got to get ready for school the next day. And I'm just like, okay, all right. You let me know the date and I'll be there. And we sorted all that out. And I was hurt, but I was too scared to cry because of previous, of me crying and really, really feeling like I let my family down. So I didn't want to do that again. So I just
and
kept everything.
your mom was in the picture though too, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. This is my half sister. So my mom was there to
Okay.
really pick me up and, hey, you okay? And like everybody else, when somebody asks you, are you okay? You just be like, yeah, I'm fine, even though you're not fine. And high school was almost like a blur, to be honest. I went into depression. I didn't know what it was. I was just feeling, didn't want to go to school, didn't care about my parents, didn't do anything like that until I met a couple of friends that was like, hey, do you hoop? Essentially, do you play basketball? And that helped me out a lot. That was something that I was like, wow, like I can be myself. I can express myself. Nobody's going to judge me. If I'm mad because I missed a shot, or if I'm excited because I made a shot, it was all fine. And then having peers to hold you accountable felt good.
Yeah.
Hey, come here, come here. We're going to play at this court at this time.
Yeah.
We need you, show up. And that encouragement really made me feel good, right? Like I went from having terrible grades to kind of getting back into it because I had that community. But then my grandmother, who called me, and I guess my mom must have told her something's wrong with me. And my grandmother never cursed at me, but she was really firm of like, what's going on? You're not taking care of yourself. I'm hearing that you're dressing like this. You're not talking to anybody. You're not really doing anything. And she told me about depression. And she said, I'm gonna show my age here. And I had to get an encyclopedia because I never heard of the word depression. And then I was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, after I read it, I was like, yeah, this is it. And this was the first person in a long time that was an adult that actually listened to me and actually made me be heard, felt heard and seen at the same time. So it was something that I was thankful for. And that conversation, she was like, hey, I need you to do me a huge favor. I never graduated high school, which I didn't know.
Yeah.
And it's because of her upbringing. She had multiple brothers and sisters, and she was the oldest, so she had to go work at a young age. So she was like, you have a chance to graduate, so do it. So from there, I told I will, and I went to summer school, night school, even regular school during the time to catch up with my grades and made her proud. And after that, I graduated and she was so thankful. And I was like, well, what else can do? What else can I do? And she was like, well, why don't you go to college? And I was just like, I don't even know if college is for me. It's just during the time because school wasn't really that important to me. I was just like, I just did it
Yeah.
to please my grandmother. And from there, I really went into a mindset of, okay, I don't know if I'm going to do school. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I went from casually drinking with some friends to really like picking up the habit of drinking and not noticing.
I think Jim has a question or two. Let me ask you this. Was your grandmother in your life during those years? Or did your grandmother, when you started kind of falling deeper into your addictions to cover up the trauma that you were going through? Was your grandmother there? Did she stay in your life for longer, or did she kind of pass also?
No, my she's still around. I'm thankful she's still
Oh,
around. She's
okay.
she's a massive influencer of some of the things that I do. Like as you can see, I have like a wrestling belt behind me. But she was the one to introduce me to wrestling. That was our time bonding, right? And she was okay with me just being me, right? Like without saying you have to do this or you have to do that. She accept me unconditionally. Like, it's only like a handful of people that I can count on that accept me unconditionally, and she's one of them.
So she definitely saw you go through some difficult times then.
Yeah, yeah, and she sat down and she told me about, sharing my emotions and expressing it.
Yeah.
And it was very confusing because I love my grandma to the fullest, and I would hear like, "Hey, you can express yourself," but then I would hear like from my father, like, "Hey, we're guys, we don't do that, unless a team won the championship or unless, it's at a wedding or a funeral. That's the only time that's acceptable. Other than that, you just keep everything bottled up inside."
So your dad lived it, obviously. You could see it, how he lived, because he would tell you, right? But
Yeah,
he also definitely lived it. So you were seeing this a long time before you probably maybe even heard it, possibly.
yeah,
Because we learn more. I believe that when I was little, maybe Jim can attest to this. I picked up way more than I heard. Subconsciously, I was picking up things all around me. I wasn't aware of that. I was not aware till years later. Things began to show up in my life. And it's like we're a little bit of mom and we're a little bit of dad. And in some places it's good, and in some places it's bad. So we have to kind of learn how to navigate mom and dad from within, because they influenced us the most, I believe, unless it was, outside family member, or it could have been a brother or sister too. We can get some strong influence by our brother, without even saying anything. That was my case. My brother and I never, we really don't even speak to this day. But I picked up a lot of stuff from just watching him, seeing him over just a little span of time. So, by the way, thank you for sharing with us. I know there's I can see people are coming in, they're coming on. Jim, if you have a question you want to, or just let Herbie share, uh, because obviously, we all want to hear victory stories, and it's always good to stay motivated and inspired. Yet you have to look at the nitty and the gritty to learn. You have to be willing to expose yourself a little bit for others to get support too, if that makes sense. Um, so Jim, if you have a question you want to ask, or I know we have a question here from our studio audience, but go ahead, Jim, if you have something. And then I didn't want to cut Herbie off, but I'm trying to do a couple of things at once so I don't ignore too many people here. So
Yeah. So Herbie,
yeah.
you said that in college you started your drinking. Do you think it was it one thing, or do you think it was like kind of culmination of many things? You said that there's expectations for you, to basically please people. You had to please your dad to act a certain way. You had to go and please your grandmother, to go to college. I don't know if there was peer pressure with your friend group to act a certain way, be a certain way. like when you get into college, a lot of times people get lost because, they're told go to college, but, there was no focus on, what you want to do. They say make something out of yourself by going to college. Okay, so I'm going to college. Classes are much harder than high school. you know it's tough. I don't know what I want to do, you know and it's tough. And for me, for a person who doesn't know their direction, it could be frustrating. And I'm wondering, is that combination of expectations, not knowing, did you have a purpose, did you have a focus on where you wanted to go and do with college?
I took some years off after high school. I took probably like 2 to 3 years off to really figure out what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
During the time, I was like, okay, well, I love music. I went to school for engineering, audio engineering, to become a producer or engineer. And even there, I was cool. It was fun. The classes wasn't too challenging, but it was just a lot of like, do I really want to do this? Am I sure? Am I just doing this because I'm told? Thankfully, after a while, I got out of that college and I decided to go to a different route, and I went to a trade school, doing the same thing. But then over time, I realized like I wanted to do things for me and not others. So I started, I don't want to say blocking out the noise, but essentially blocking out the noise and really just focusing on what makes me happy and not what makes everyone else happy. Uh,
Did you suffer from any kind of anxiety? I mean, because when you get to like alcohol, it's to go ahead and calm your system down, I think, right? And I don't was that something that you needed to do, or did it just make you feel happy? Were you going through some depression during those times when you started? um, what led you down that addiction?
So honestly, the college life, you go to so many parties and everybody's drinking, and
Hmm.
you're like, oh well, okay, cool. And from there, some of my buddies and I, even when we wasn't going to parties, we were home playing Madden or playing 2K, and we always had some sort of alcohol involved. And then that just became a routine, as far as like, oh well, I'm always drinking any day with a Y, essentially. That ends with a Y. And I didn't realize that was just to hide my emotions, or just honestly just to get out of my own head. Sometimes we are too scared to really face our thoughts. And for the most part, I was really scared to face the truth and understand what I wanted to do, or was I sure about it? And you don't realize, when you're 20 something, that there's so much learning to do. Your life is nowhere near to be over.
I guess it felt good. It's like we always talk about the comfort zone, and it seemed like alcohol can be like a comfort zone, right? It makes you feel good, relaxed, kind of takes the edge off of the stresses in life, and the problems. But when did you find that your drinking was a problem? How did you get to that point where you realize this is no good, this is not working for me, this is a problem?
When I started when I started punching my walls,
Mm.
right?
Is
I'm
it?
I'm the kind of person that you see now is like, that's just me majority of the time. I'm just pretty calm and chilled. And it wasn't until one night I was just angry, and all my emotions just came out, and I punched my pillow to try to release that emotion. That didn't work, and I punched the wall. And then after I punched the wall, like, I blacked out, and I woke up, and I was like, "Man, this is the problem. This is not like me." Like, what? I'm I'm letting the alcohol control my emotions in a way where I can't even control it anymore. And I realized, like, man, wait, hold on. Not only this is a problem, but I'm drinking so much. I'm drinking often, where the liquor store that I used to go to, the person who worked the cash register kind of knew, depending on what question you ask me, like, oh, hey, he's gonna get this, or hey, I already got this for you. Or sometimes 8 out of 10 times he would already have it there for me. Like, hey, oh, okay, hey, I know Wednesdays you normally get um a bottle of Hennessy. Here it goes. I got this small bottle just for you. And that's when I realized that I had an issue.
When did the first trauma? When did you ever notice the first sign of trauma, or you didn't? You didn't know, or did you begin to notice that something was obviously wrong and you were covering it up? Because I know you attempted suicide. That's deep. Um, I see the question here. I'm going to see if we can help Herbie change course just a little tiny bit. I don't want to derail him. But how does someone overcome grief, losing a loved one, and not turn to gambling as a resolve? Stay with the broadcast. We're going to be here another few more minutes. You're going to get some answers out of this. When I know you were the alcohol came into play, and of course, as we're growing up, we're buddies with people, and we're going over somebody's house, and next thing you know, you're in situations that, man, how did I get here? When do you feel the first real sign of trauma started showing up, and maybe you didn't know it was trauma, but it was something that was troubling you, or you didn't understand that, but it was trauma? It was because trauma has a way of wanting to escape, whether it's going to gamble, going excessive smoke, excessive drinking, or even attempt suicide.
Yeah, to answer your question, probably when I was 20, 22, 23. That's when it really like started showing up. It started showing up once I was in college, and the pressure of full-time student, full-time work, and realizing that alcohol was something that I leaned on just to take off the pressure, right? Here I am trying to be the best college student I could be, the best employee I could be, and then the best boyfriend I could be. And that was a lot. It was a lot to carry. Those days when, Monday come around, I'm just like, oh, here we go again, right? That's when I realized, when I think the first semester, that's when it really like, oh, hold on, I don't know what's going on with me. I was feeling numb. I was feeling frustrated, and I was just really expressing my emotions just by drinking a little bit here and there.
So your grandma, she knew you were going through some of this, but this was still kind of hidden at this time.
Yeah. So during the time after high school, unfortunately, I was in the middle of a crossfire of a shootout, and then thankfully I survived. It was like in front of my building, and after that, I called my girlfriend. She lived in Tampa.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I got an angel watching me for sure. I went, called my girlfriend. It was real late, and I didn't want to wake my mom up or wake my dad up with something like that. And my girlfriend was asleep. Obviously, it's like 3 a.m, and I was like, I just want to make it past 21. And so she's like, hey, I'm in Tampa. Why don't you come out here? Get out. She's from the Bronx as well. So she's like, hey, get out, come here, and just start all over. And I was like, sure. But the problem is, when you leave somewhere, no one tells you that wherever you go, your problem goes with you. Doesn't matter what happened. If you didn't resolve them, they follow you. So with that, I was just like, man, I was bummed out. And obviously that was traumatizing, if anyone can imagine. Took me a while to like block that out, but being in the Bronx, that's something that you kind of get familiar with. If like gang violence, shootouts, that type of stuff, it just happens. But after that, we figured out a way to balance out. Hey, what do you want to do? And I thought college, and that's when everything started to hit the fan.
Herbie, how did you get to that depressive state? What led you down that kind of like despair and depression that ultimately led you to possible suicide? What was it? Was it a culmination of things? Was it one thing that happened? Was it too much pressure of all the things that you were doing? What was the road, or what was the trigger that kind of moved you into that place?
It's gonna sound weird, but it just felt like I didn't belong here, right? Like um, I'm doing everything to please others, and that was okay. Like, okay, cool. And then when I started doing things for me, it was like, all right, fine, cool. But then all the trauma, it really just started exploding all at once. And then when I sat down, I was just like, man, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, I'm in a different state. My support system is not that great. I probably had maybe 4 people that was really my true support system. And I was just like, well, what am I doing? Like, I feel like I don't belong here. And I thought that was like the perfect choice at the time, which obviously it's not.
Yeah, the people here on this program, they deal with the problem addiction, and the gambling that they deal with. It's kind of like an escape, to go ahead and move them away. But that gambling, that problem gambling, has a price, and it's financially destructive, and it takes away time, and it brings them down. After they get that rush. And did alcohol kind of play a role in that, where, to kind of solve your problems of those bad feelings, you would drink, and then and then you just kind of feel worse, and you have to go and drink more? Did alcohol have any kind of a role in in that kind of depressive state that you got into?
Yeah, it did. It had a lot. What they say, uh, a drunk mind tells sober thoughts. And that was something that, like, for myself, I thought, man, like, I always had these thoughts in my head. And then when I was drunk, they pretty much was saying it out loud. It played a massive role. And that's one of the keys. I wouldn't say one of the keys, but that was something that played a factor.
How did you pull yourself out of that state? What happened? Did you seek help? Did you go out and decide to go and seek help? Did someone go and talk to you?
Yeah. So what I did, I Baker act myself during my last suicide attempt. Um, my now she's my wife. She found me in a place where mentally and physically I wasn't the same, and she knows me. She's been knowing me for years, and but she created that safe space for me to say, "This is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling weak. I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm thinking about and ending my life." And because of her, she introduced me to the suicide prevention lifeline number, and then I made a choice that I Baker act myself. And that experience it was it's frustrating to say the least. I'm gonna keep it PG. It was frustrating to say the least. Being there, I was treated more like a number than actual a person. The nursing staff actually was willing to listen, willing to talk, to communicate, but the psychiatrist who was actually running that unit, he was just like, okay, you need this, keep it moving. You need this, you keep it moving. But I've learned how to advocate myself. Being there, being a self advocate, like, hey, I feel uncomfortable taking XYZ unless you actually give me a proper test.
Were they pushing antidepressants?
It, it was, yes, it was that and more. But being the person that I am, I'm like, hey, you just read a brief profile of why I'm here. You didn't give me actual diagnose. You didn't test me to see anything. And I just refused everything until I actually saw another psychiatrist, and she gave me the proper test. And she was like, oh, you don't have that issue. You're just depressed. Just seek therapy. And that led to me leaving that place, thankfully. But it led to me actually being an advocate for myself and speaking up and understanding the power of your voice. Sometimes when you're in a mindset like that, you don't feel like you have the authority to say, hey, I don't want that, or I don't need that, right? But that led to me doing that, and that led to me being able to not only, I don't want to say like heal myself, but actually taking the proper steps of like writing, journaling, joining support groups, networking with like-minded minds to understand, like, okay, this is hope, because I couldn't really afford therapy during that time. I was barely getting by because therapy during that time was about $200, and I was just like, $200 per hour. I just was unachievable for me.
Wow, that's interesting. And of course, there's so much. There's so much here that would be nice to unfold, but it'd probably take a couple of sessions. So a lot of the things that you experienced during your adolescent and your young adult obviously had something to do with, or a lot to do with you as being a child. How do you feel now? Even though you've gotten, you've gone through your counseling, you've gone through experiences that really teach you the most, because you can go to a coach, you can go to a counselor, you can learn a lot. When you experience something yourself, like attempted suicide, and you wake up, that's not something light. That's not a light thing. I'm sure you still, there's thoughts. They're going to be, they say that there's 80,000 thoughts or more flying through our subconscious mind at any given time. So I thought 80,000 thoughts. Well, that's a lot. I don't think I think that, but we don't realize what's really going on behind the scenes. We're not until we stop and say, wait a minute. Oh, my subconscious is pumping blood. My subconscious is working this area of my leg or my liver. We're kind of like just consciously moving around and doing things. I know that there's triggers, there's temptations that come around. Maybe they're not as strong as they used to because you know how to defeat those things. What comes to your mind when you start thinking those kinds of thoughts? Like a thought comes to you and it's not a good thought.
Well, to answer your question, I put myself in, I like to say, like, winning situations, and that's situations that I know that I can thrive in. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where it's not going to be the best for me. So realizing and being self-aware of, like, hey, should I go out to this party where I know there's going to be strippers and other substance around? Nah, that's not a situation I know I shouldn't be in. I should be in a situation that I'm going to thrive and be the best version of me. So what I've done is just always be aware of that, put myself in a winning situation, and then also having a plan, right? Some people call it a safety plan. And a safety plan is just pretty much you having a routine of doing things to help you get through those triggers or those emotions that can get challenging and difficult for you. You don't have to sit there and write it down and look at it and go over it every day. You can actually just, have it, a picture of it, or you can just, text it to yourself. So what I normally do is when I have those emotions that's taken over me, when I realize, like, okay, it's just a bad, it's a bad day. It's not a bad life. So I do things, I do activities, right? As far as like sitting down, coloring. I'll color with my kids, right? We sit there, we color between the lines. I can draw a rainbow Mickey Mouse if I feel like it, right? Because it's just coloring, it's just releasing whatever I'm feeling. Or if I have a moment, I would do this thing called journaling, right? Like, and I just write when I'm expressing myself, and it looks like it's like if a 2-year-old wrote it. When I'm writing my emotions normal, and then from whether it's anger, frustration, or pain, it just start looking like gibberish. And then from there, I could just rip it out the journal and tear it up and release that emotion. So that's one of the techniques that I use when I realize, like, man, I'm holding on to something a little too much. Or another thing is using the phone for a voice note. I use the phone as a voice note. I like that more than journaling, just because I can actually listen to how I feel. So it can be, I can actually hear the tone and the emotion. Hey, that sounds like pain here. Now I can go back and reassess. Hey, let me see what's going on with that. Why am I feeling that way? Or if it's anger, frustration, why am I holding on that way, right? Like if I'm driving and someone cuts me off and flip me the bird, why am I letting that mess up my day? There's something more than that. maybe that person's in a rush and I'm blocking whatever. But why am I holding on to that? Why am I still, so I can just use these techniques to help understand why am I holding on to these emotions and to get out of those dark places.
And especially when it's just, when it's just you, sometimes you find yourself, it's just you alone in your thought, yeah, there's environments, there's experiences that can create experiences. Yet when you're alone and those thoughts come, I remember I heard a preacher he said, the birds will always fly over your head. You don't have to let them nest. Thought that's kind of interesting. I didn't really think too much of it at the time, but I think about it all the time. There's always thoughts. There's always birds flying above our heads. It's another thing to let a bird nest and build that nest on top of your head. Of course, that'll look kind of dumb, right? To let a bird, can you imagine? In fact, I thought I saw a person walking around with a nest on top of their head and there was birds in there. I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? But we're not going to do that. That's kind of, unless you're one of those people that do the nest thing on the head. But anyways, that's just, I'm using that as a parable, not as a literal thing, obviously. When you're alone, times when you're by yourself, that's one of the most difficult times. I believe that it's easier to get started. Is it easier to get started or to want to do something wrong to yourself or with yourself when you're in the midst of people or when you're by yourself? I guess it could go either way. You could be you could feel lost in the crowd. I kind of do that at times myself. I have many times in the past. I felt alone in the crowd, many people, but I felt alone. And then it could be the opposite. You could be all alone, and that could be the worst time of thinking. Did I make any sense there, Jim?
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on the questions here.
I'd like to go and also ask Herbie about how important is support, and when did you start accepting support, like from now your wife and other people? Because when you grow up, trying to be more masculine, just trying to hide your feelings, that usually keeps you kind of like bottled up, and you don't really want to speak because you feel uncomfortable. Now, the support that you got from now your wife and the counseling, how important was that in helping you change? Or did you just bring it out from yourself? Would you credit yourself as the number one asset that you had in turning your life around?
Yeah, it's that part. It starts with self.
Yourself.
It starts with self. Like, obviously, when I need support, I'll go lean on people for support. But if you're not willing to support yourself, how can others support you? So it was something that I had to start speaking self-confidence in the mirror, right? I used sticky notes and had confidence words everywhere, just positive affirmations. And even to this day, I may not say them out loud, but before I brush my teeth, I always look at myself and tell myself, I am smart. I can change the world if I just believe. And just talking to myself in a positive way gives me that confidence to be me. There's going to be days where I can't control what the next person feel or how they react to me, but I can control how I feel. And that's by just putting in the confidence in myself and just saying, okay, am I dysfunctional alcoholic? No, that's not who I am. This is who I am. I'm a person that's willing to be vulnerable with others and teach them that, hey, there is hope. Look, I'm someone that struggled for over a decade of functional alcoholic to now being sober for 6.5 years. And this Friday coming up is going to be 9 years since my last suicide attempt. It can happen, but you have to believe in yourself and then be willing to accept support as well. Like, hey, this person actually cares about me. I can lean in and say I'm not having a great day. or I can just have them listen without, any judgment or anything like that.
Yeah. It seems like you made a decision to start caring about yourself. And when you had that focus, you started attracting a lot of things in your life that really started snowballing, like getting help, getting counseling, learning, doing journaling, all these things. It was like a focus. And the number one, foundation was, what? I care about myself. I want to get better. I want to get better. Right. So in that mind, now you started making that change, right? You started, figuring out ways. You started becoming more aware. You told me that like in drinking and in that drunk state, you start kind of learning about yourself. But oftentimes it's something that's kind of ugly that you don't want to face, or it's just something that can be more depressing. But, you can go ahead and take that knowledge and start dealing with it, right? And I think that's what you did, right? That's what you started doing. You said, you know what, this is the aspect of my life that I need to go and work on, that self-awareness, and just taking the effort and energy to deal with it, to figure out, how to deal with it. So yeah, that's what I see, in your recovery. And maybe you can go and talk about how you help others.
Yeah. So, thank you once again for leading that. That's a great segue. So what I do is I do keynote speaking, and I do keynote speaking and teaching those about the signs of suicide, how to recognize it, and how to properly guide someone to get the right support. When we talk about suicide, it's one of the words that a lot of people don't, they feel uncomfortable talking about it. And if someone says, "Hey, I'm having suicidal ideation," or "I attempted," that leaves a lot of people uneasy. And so what I do is I teach them, hey, you can guide them to this person that's willing to have this conversation, that this is what they do. Because not everybody's strong enough to have that conversation. But then also teaching those, hey, this might be a sign of suicide when you start seeing appearance change, isolation. If you start seeing behavior patterns change, you can just ask, and asking doesn't hurt. And then when it comes to addiction, I also do keynote speaking on that as well, and breaking it down and showing what helped me, and then also providing resources for those as well.
Yeah, I mean, like having that kind of situation where you can identify with a lot of the people who need help is important. And a lot of us, it's especially for guys, guys don't want to go and speak up. Usually the guys don't want to go to the doctor's office and ask for help. I'm fine, but something's wrong, and oftentimes it's very difficult for them to express. So yeah, I mean, like the right kind of counseling, that kind of support can go and kind of lead them in a very safe way. Uh,
Yeah.
they
Uh,
can kind of, see that it's okay to ask for help, get help, help themselves, and reach out. And yeah, and giving those people, that safe place, a comfortable person to talk to, is very important, because that's a tough place in your life, with that kind of depression and being suicidal. Very tough.
yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add, because I really started being, vocal and letting everyone know, just because when I looked into the stats of suicide, and you see men die by suicide 4 times higher than women, and majority of the time that when someone dies by suicide, 53% is with a firearm. So it's just like, this is something that no one's talking about. I'm willing to put my head out there and tell people, like, hey, I struggled, and it's okay, but there is hope. And I wanted to just be that light for others, to give them hope, that beacon of light.
Yeah, helping other people see, things from a different perspective. It's just like we have this one train of thought, and we say there's no solution. There's no solution. There's a different way of looking at it, and it's good that people like you, Herbie, and Santos can show that there is a way out. You guys went through all sorts of problems and trauma, but there is a solution. There's a way out of it. and yeah, you're showing them that good perspective, a new perspective, and that gives hope to people. That gives hope.
Well, uh, we hope we have given hope to those of you that were out there. My call to action is, where is my call to action? Is somewhere. First of all, I want to thank Herbie Mack, herbiemac.com. You can go there, all things considered, herbiemac.com. You can reach out to Herbie. He can share a little bit more. We'll probably have him on again. Maybe we'll have him on here and there. He can share a little bit more about his story. So I know it's kind of hard to get everything in 30 minutes. So this was episode number 361. Hopefully you were strapped in with your seatbelt nice and tight. Turn down all distractions. Who knows? Maybe you took some notes down. My call to action is, where must you go from here? Where must you go from here? That's really my call to action. I definitely want to thank Herbie here. I'm going to wait for another question. I'd like to greet those of you that were here. There was quite a few of you guys, but nobody, well, a few of you were putting comments in.
Do you want me to answer the
yeah,
I think it was a question a while ago. I can't I gotta look for it.
Yeah, the one about someone passing away. You can get a little bit more personal on that. We've got just a few more minutes, and then you can do that. Let me see. You have a YouTube. Do you have a YouTube channel, Herbie?
Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel.
If you want to type, can you type it in? Put it in the notes there. I know I put your Herbie Mack. Is your YouTube channel tied to Herbie Mack?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
okay.
All of that is tied in. I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast, and I also have a newsletter.
So the best way would be herbiemac.com.
Correct.
That's the quickest way. There was a question. Let me see. Was it about grief? Was that, how does someone overcome?
Yeah, I was trying to look for it in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, there it goes. Yeah. So what I've done is I had to learn how to sit on this emotion for a while and accept it, right? But I celebrate their life. So whether it's their birthday or the day they pass, I celebrate. I do something that is their favorite. Like, for example, my sister, she was a kid, so she was 3. So I may eat like a cake or something like that, something sweet, like ice cream. And then also for my cousin, I'll try to play basketball that day, or I'll watch a basketball game. I do something to celebrate their life. I don't post it on social media anymore. I just keep it to myself, and I'll do that, and I'll remember that they're with me. I have some pictures of them, so I'll look at it, and I may write to them like, "Hey, this is what's going on in my life. This is what's happening. Hopefully you're watching above me. You're proud of me. I'm living a life which, if they're still involved." So I still speak to them every day. Especially on them days when I don't feel like me, like, hey, I need some guidance, whether it's a prayer, whether it's just screaming frustration or whatever. And I always keep them involved. And I always act like they're still here.
Yeah, it's important to be able to go through grief. You shouldn't suppress it. You shouldn't, push it aside. There's a time to go ahead and be sorrowful for losing a loved one. But it's also important to go and get support. Make sure that you have, good people around you, to go ahead and, give you that kind of support. And, eventually you will be able to, get through it and cherish the memories of those people that you lost.
Yeah, I call that MEMS, memories, MEMS for short. Finding ways to keep the MEMS going.
Yeah,
little rituals or what have you. Yeah,
yes.
We've got go ahead. You want to share? We've got a few more minutes here. We've got
Okay.
closing,
Uh,
but
yeah, just like if anyone ever seen like Inside Out, right? Like that's like probably every favorite counselor therapist movie because it teaches you about your emotions, right? It's just like concept of the movie is like joy is the leader of all the feelings and emotions, and joy is blocking out sadness and disgust and all of that. And it's just because you need every emotion. You have to go through every emotion. You can't just suppress all your emotions. Just say I'm happy one day or I'm sad one day. You have to go through it to understand it. Another tool to use if you don't understand how you feeling is called the emotion wheel. Some people call it the feeling wheel, and it's a big wheel where you can point to the emotions that you're going through. And that's something that some days I use it when I don't know how I'm feeling. Essentially, there's what 8 core emotions, but in that is like a sub emotion of that. And it's okay to feel complex, if you feel happy and sad at the same time, just based off of whatever emotion that you're going through.
do you have a picture of the wheel on your website or something like
No. I have a newsletter coming out next week about it.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn more about what Herbie Mack, all the way from Florida, the coolest weather on the planet.
Some
We
would
all-
say yes.
We all wish, huh? And so yes, be sure to visit Hernandez. Let me see. How does one overcome the bad thoughts of the day? By coming to a broadcast just like this one. That is true. We all need community. We need people. We need friends, maybe not necessarily friends, but we need people. And sometimes we can't be around those people all the time. Yet there are people that we can get close to by way of a video, by way of a book, or by way of a podcast or a community. And sometimes even over a cup of coffee and a small cup of cola with ice and lemon and a protein burger in person. I think that's always the best one, when you can meet someone in person and just feel supported, feel energized, and know that, man, that person's also having his own share or her share of problems. Yet look at them. Look at them. So with that said, I want to thank all of you guys. I'm going to give Herbie here a thought. I'm going to give Jim, if Jim can give us a thought within 30 seconds, because we're down to the last couple minutes. Let me see. Herbie gets another. Let me see. So Dennis, I hope that you got that one. But be sure to visit herbiemac.com. How can I stay consistent, feeling motivated on the low days?
You just still have to push through. There's days when I don't want to get out of bed. I don't feel like I'm the superhero that my kids think I am. But I push through. And then during that day, someone or something may happen that will make me feel like me, right? So even those days when this was recent, it's about a couple of weeks ago, I didn't feel the best version of me. And I looked in the mirror and I spoke to myself in the, hey, you are smart. I kept telling myself positive affirmations, and that helped out a whole lot. Just saying it out loud and believing like I am that superhero that my kids, excited for me. Daddy, pick me up. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And then my wife, there's days where, she will say something to me and that would cheer me up. So it's having that positive affirmation to yourself and speaking to yourself, because if you're not kind to yourself, who will be kind to you? But then also leaning on others and saying, hey, I may not have it today. Jordan had a bad day. LeBron had a bad game. So just realizing like it's okay to have a supporting cast to lean on. There's certain people that, hey, I'm not feeling like myself. And they may tell you something. They may send you something. It could be a TikTok video to make you feel good about yourself. Or they can just say, you are amazing. It's okay. You don't have to carry the world on your shoulders today.
That's right. We can all carry a little piece of it. together if we can. So with that said, again, my call to action, I want to thank Herbie all the way from Florida, herbiemac.com. We'll likely have him here again, and visit the website. Jim, all the way from Tucson. Go ahead, Jim. Give your 5 seconds, 10 seconds, Jim.
Okay, yeah, I just want to go ahead and say thank you very much there, Herbie. You reminded us that it's important that we have the ability to choose, to get better, right? And if we can make that choice, we have a focus. And by doing that, we can help others. And when we help others, we actually help ourselves in the same process. So thank you very much there, Herbie. We really appreciate your information and your
Thank you.
message of hope.
So with that said, we've come to the end of our broadcast number 361. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. You've gotten something out of it. City by the Bay, Dennis, Mr. Kevan, Laura, Mark, and to the rest of you here that were here by way of Facebook and Twitch. Who else was here that I did? YouTuber in the making. There we go. All right, until our next episode, will I see you at the top?
Thank you very much. You have a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, I think we've come to the end. Thank you, Herbie. We're going to have you on again, man. Lord willing.
Lord willing. All right, man. Have a good one.
All right, thank you. Thank you for being part of it.